Hey guys, welcome to the new episode of Horror Thoughts, episode number whatever. Um, on a previous episode, we looked at an unused script for Freddy versus Jason. I believe that one was called Nightmare 13 or something kind of silly like that, because this movie spent a lot of time in development and a lot of different scripts were written. I believe the last one we read might have been the first version of it, or at least a very early version of it. The one we're looking at today, I think is a few years later, but still pretty early in development. I didn't get an exact year on it, but just reading it, my guess it's probably around 97 is my pure wild guess, just based on the script itself. This one is called Jason versus Freddy. Do you have the writers pulled up? I forgot to write their names down.
Let me. I got the script pulled up. Let me see if it
Yeah, if you can just tell me their names real quick.
shows them. Brandon Braga and Ronald D. Moore.
Yeah, not familiar with them, but they're the ones that wrote the script. I thought the last episode we did was a lot of fun, so just do another one. I'll give a brief synopsis in case you haven't read it, and then we'll just get into our thoughts. So, how to sum up? So in this script, the Friday the 13th series exists as movies, a la Wes Craven's New Nightmare. But in this story, the Friday the 13th films are based on a real life serial killer, Jason Voorhees. And Jason has been arrested and is on trial. I think because the O.J. Simpson trials were happening. When were those? Because that would give us the date.
Like 94, 95.
Okay, then maybe that's when this script was written, because it feels like, maybe not that's why, but it feels like kind of that might be why this is a courtroom drama. So the story is about Jason's defense attorney, Ruby, who is trying to prove Jason, air quotes, innocent by way of insanity. And what her and her psychiatrist friend discover is that Jason doesn't sleep. He never sleeps. And it's some kind of, I don't know if it's an actual disorder, but they throw some term in there that is supposed to be someone that can just not sleep, but this sleep deprivation can cause insanity. So they're investigating his whatever's wrong with his brain, that he isn't sleeping. So they put him under like anesthesia. And then it is revealed that as a child in this reality, remember the Friday the 13th movies are just movies, but in this reality, Nightmare on Elm Street are not movies. That shit happened. And what has been retconned into the backstory is that Freddy and Jason's mother were lovers, very kinky lovers, and it is described in entirely too much detail.
I wrote a note about that they are very aggressive and straightforward with the sexual wording of things.
Particularly between those two. I didn't know that there was a kink for someone wanting to see Betsy Palmer get railed by Robert Englund, but
there's
I guess there is.
There's someone out there who just needs that.
Because they come back to it like 7 times.
Yeah, a lot.
Please stop.
A lot of times. And they're, like I said, they're very descriptive with what they say. Like they pull no punches. It's not like they tenderly embrace. It's like, no. it's bad.
But what is uncovered is that Jason saw them together as a child, ran out. Freddy came after him, and this is human Freddy, of course. He hasn't been burned yet. And Freddy attacked Jason in the lake, presumed him to be dead. Jason didn't die and just sort of wandered off into the forest to do things for decades, and then 20 years later became a serial killer. But as soon as Jason goes to sleep, Freddy's there instantly as, his normal self. And he's like, oh, I thought I killed you. I guess I'll just do it again. But Freddy discovers, by the way, this is like an hour in. This is like 50, 60 pages in.
Yeah.
Before this happens.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really boring courtroom stuff that I just sort of skipped over. But Freddy discovers that Jason is a doorway into the real world, not the dream world, because it's that dumb plot again. Freddy wants to leave the place where he's powerful and come to the place where he can get his ass kicked.
Yeah, take away all home field advantage.
But for some reason, in this script, Freddy coming into the real world is like a really good thing for him because he's like insanely powered once he gets out. He can somehow cause hallucinations that cause people to like panic and sort of kill themselves, which is remarkably uninteresting from a movie perspective, because all Freddy really does is stand there and look at someone, and then they just sort of freak out.
They just kill themselves.
Yeah, it's very odd. But Freddy gets out into the real world for reasons. And first thing he decides to do is go to the mall. There's lots of kids at the mall. Okay. Maybe the writers saw mall rats and were like, we want to do that.
Maybe.
Freddy goes to the mall and again is just kind of standing there and like looking at people, and then they're freaking out and like dying in escalators and stuff. And Ruby, her psychiatrist friend, they wake Jason up, and Jason's gonna murder them because Jason. And then they're like, no, we're homies. And Ruby has shown him a pedigree of kindness throughout the script that has sort of reminded Jason of his mother. And so he kind of goes, okay. And then the three of them go to the mall to defeat Freddy. And Freddy and Jason fight. Freddy unleashes a cardboard cutout of a Terminator robot Jason. So, and this is obviously years before Jason X, but ostensibly there's a Jason X versus proper Jason fight in this. How does it end? Somehow, I think something happens and Freddy tries to escape back into the real world, but he gets like trapped, like in Jason, like the portal closes somehow. And then the mall blows up and Freddy and Jason get blown up inside the mall while Ruby and her psychiatrist friend are outside. The end.
Yeah, there's a portable gas chamber. Freddy says sweet dreams. They struggle. God, it's like right at the very end. They really just kept this thing going. Ruby has a cool line saying time to face reality, which is very cool of her. At some point something has to blow up. I know that was a thing. It's completely filled with flames. Up. Yeah.
Something got set on fire at some point.
Yeah,
like during one of the hallucination things when Freddy was just sort of like staring at people.
There you go. A stack of propane tanks. There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew it blew. I knew it blew up, rocked by a Titanic-sized explosion. So that tells you how big it is. And her client is dead. That's how it ends right there in the movie. So what a what a fucking film.
Better or worse than the last one?
I think they're better and worse than each other for different reasons. I think the other one would have been just amazing to see because it would have been fantastic that someone actually put that to the screen. But as far as I think the start of this movie, like the crime court stuff, I thought that was kind of like a cool, or not a cool, but like an interesting idea. So at least it had that going for it. The Nightmare 13, I don't know what the fuck it was even trying to have going for it. So I don't know. I think I think if this wasn't like a Freddy versus Jason movie, like if it was just a Jason movie and they did like a
Hmm.
trial thing, I thought that was like a cool idea. And then the Freddy shit kicked in, and I was like, "This is insane. This is insanely bad."
I wonder if it started as like a standalone Jason thing, and they were like, "Hey, we need a Freddy versus Jason pitch," and then the writers just like panicked
Well, the
because
writers.
it's not. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was gonna say I looked up the writers if people want to know who wrote this. Brandon Braga and his partner Ronald D. Moore worked on the Star Trek franchise together.
Oh,
He was a key force behind the live action series, and he later became executive producer and writer on shows such as 24, Terra Nova, The Orville, Mission Impossible 2, Star Trek, the Star Trek movies, and he was an executive producer on Cosmos.
hmm.
So he has a pretty big fucking resume to write this.
You're a big sci-fi guy.
And Ronald D. Moore uh, did Star Trek and Battlestar Galactica.
Hmm.
So they're big sci-fi dudes, which once I read that, I was like, all right, that makes sense with
I
what
can
they were
kind of see
doing.
it. There's a lot of like kind of Star Trekky techno babble in this. Well, they'll just say stuff. It's like that kind of sounds made up,
Yeah.
but okay.
There's one point I didn't even bother typing it out because it was like the most insane line I'd ever read where one of the characters is dying and they were trying to they had like a running joke of trying to find a name of what his disorder could be. And he's dying and he's like, how does the term transcendental psychopath in involuntary insomnia sound? I'm like, what in the fuck were you trying to say, dude? Like it was the fact that someone wrote it. I'll find it. I didn't write it down, but I remember reading it and thinking that's insane that someone wrote that on a paper thinking they were like edgy.
Well, he's looking for that. I'll say that I agree that a courtroom drama isn't a terrible idea. It's just clearly they struggled with how do we get Freddy into this, and I don't think they succeeded. Um, I also don't know how I feel about the Jason is a real life killer and the Friday the 13th movies are just movies thing. Mostly because I feel like there's a lot of talking down in this script. I'd be curious to know if these two writers are actually even fans of either of these franchises. I would imagine not. They seem to kind of hate it. Like they make a lot of
Yeah.
really sort of like mean spirit, not maybe not mean spirited, but there's a lot of like, oh, these movies are stupid and cliched. And sure, some of them are, but I don't know. It's a weird way to set up a continuation of those franchises by constantly being like, this is stupid and it sucks and I hate it. So that kind of kept rubbing up against me,
Yeah.
especially because what they came up with wasn't exactly high art. Like
No.
you don't get to make fun of the Friday the 13th movies when this is what you're writing. Like, calm down.
Yeah.
And
It
sorry,
wasn't
go ahead.
very no, it wasn't as deep as I think that they were trying to be.
It
Uh
feels like trying to be a Scream thing, but I don't know if Scream had happened yet, but it feels like trying to do that kind of thing. But I don't know, Scream never felt mean spirited about it. It always just sort of felt like it was having fun with some of the cliches and stuff. They were never like calling anybody out or anything like that.
yeah. It just seemed like a jumbled mess, to be honest. It had good points or good things I think could have been decent for a movie, but like that's trying to shoehorn Freddy into it is really where it just lost all footing, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's got the same problem as I think Nightmare 13, where the characterization of Freddy is just so off. Like this doesn't feel like Freddy to me in any way. I don't know what he's doing or why he's doing it. None of it's consistent with how Freddy acts in his movies. Again, this wanting to come into the real world thing doesn't make a lick of sense. That's how he's defeated every time. And so this kind of like there's this disregard for the rules of Elm Street, which is weird. And then that's before you even get into the weird backstory stuff. I don't know what the obsession is with connecting their backstories, because several of these scripts do it.
Yeah.
And it's just fucking weird and kind of gross. And just why?
All that these scripts that you've had the privilege of showing me, that I'm so glad I've read, it's only shown me how good I think the one that got turned into a movie actually made it, because some of these, it's like I couldn't imagine this going past being a script.
And they didn't, to be fair.
Thankfully. But just imagine in a world where Freddy versus Jason doesn't get made and you get Jason versus Freddy. How big of a letdown that would have been. Oh, geez. I don't know if you have any pros for this movie, pros and cons. I made a little bit of things.
The only thing that I consider like half a pro is I thought Ruby was okay as a lead character. And I think this is the best I've seen, because we've done this a couple times where we put in a character that is like Jason's mom.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is the least stupid version of that. Whereas, you know, in Friday the 13th Part 2, Ginny just puts on a sweater and Jason is a moron. And then in the reboot, that girl, Whitney, just happens to look exactly like his mother, which is just a giant coincidence that you have to accept. I like in this one, it's more of a behavior thing. It's more of how she treats him and how she talks to him.
Yeah.
Instead of like a physical thing. So I thought that was okay. I mean, on a pure just like stupid level, Terminator Jason sounded hilarious. And I would have liked to see that. Like, not in like a good movie way, but just in a, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And then Terminator Jason fighting regular Jason. Do they call him Terminator Jason in the script? They say something like that. Maybe RoboCop.
RoboCop Jason. That's what it was.
It's like, okay. Which is weird because that ostensibly happens a few years later. So someone read that and went, I'm going to use that.
They're like, I'm taking that with me.
I like that one. The rest of the script, no, but I'm keeping that.
I'm trashing all of it, but I'm keeping that.
Robot Jason.
And I'm
going to something.
And you know how they liked the sleeping bag scene? We're going to bring that back twice as good. That's fucking funny. My pros was, I've already touched on, I thought the lawyer thing could have been a cool idea, had been done better. And there's a part where she's having her first Freddy dream, and since she's like a defense lawyer and deals with killers and stuff, all the images that were popping up were serial killers throughout the years. I was like, that'd probably be kind of a cool dream. Like if you worked with murderers and stuff, that's kind of a cool concept.
It's better than them being in the wrestling ring from the last one.
That is exactly what I thought when I read it. I'm like, at least he wasn't wrestling Hitler or something like that.
He was in like the audience and like the referee was like Ted Bundy or something.
Yeah. It wasn't that. So
weird that two of these have cameos from other real life serial killers. But weird that happened twice.
That again, the things that they're deciding to carry over is crazy. They're like, let's not take the solid points of these movies, but you know what? RoboCop Jason, that's it. I love the idea of Jeffrey Dahmer in here. Cons right out the gate. I hate kills when things like this happen. It just bugs me. Is the first kill is the girl throws a knife at Jason and he catches it out of air and throws it right back.
Like a big like action movie moment.
That stuff drives me crazy. I'm like, no, that wouldn't happen.
Especially because this is supposed to be real life Jason.
Yeah, exactly. Like he's not a superhero. He's what I got. Oh, whenever he's in the MRI and he gets pulled into Jason's chest, that was a very pointless point of the that was so dumb sounding. I couldn't imagine seeing it.
Oh, just the idea of Jason being a portal.
Yeah, like he pulls his head into his chest. I was like, I could not imagine seeing. That's where they lost me. I was like, I'm over this now. That's insane.
It's so weird. It's like it's a weird thing, and it's like, what? And clearly it's just the writers being like, I have no idea.
Yeah.
Just throwing their hands in the air, be like, we have to get Freddy in the real world somehow.
It's just crazy to think that he just pulled him into his chest and there was knife gloves there. Like,
the characters trying to tell the other characters who are understandably like, well, she's fucking nuts.
yeah, you're like, she's insane. Like, so I don't know how many times they like to pepper in "Don't dream and drive" like this. That
Oh my god, so often. Why is that the favorite pun?
they love that one. Every one of them's like, "Don't dream and drive." I'm like,
it's in one of the movies, in one of the actual movies, and it's in 2 of these so far. Like, how? It's not that clever.
Yeah, it's
Why would you call back Dream Child?
of all the things, like that's the one. Don't dream and drive. Every time. It's like, I guess they're just
like if they did Prime Time Bitch or something, I'd be like, okay, that's a funny one. Like that one.
Yes, something. It's like they're like, oh, this will resonate with the new audience who never saw 5. But no.
Which in fairness is a lot of people.
It's a lot of people, but it's still a horrible line no matter what time period you put it in. Here we go. I fucking searched long enough and I found the damn line that annoyed the shit out of me. I can't quite, he's done, or whatever, he's about to pass out. He goes, I can't quite decide on a title. And then he says, how about mass narcosis induced by trans-dimensional paranormal sociopathic entities?
Oh, that's right, because he's like picking like a paper or something.
Yeah.
It's like this psychiatrist, right?
Yeah. Fuck off with all of that. Like they tried
He's a horn dog for reasons.
Yeah.
He just will randomly just be like boobs.
Yeah.
Like,
boobs.
okay, that's a weird character trait.
And there's a part where he sees boobs and they have human mouths on the nipples.
That's right. They're going to eat them.
Yep. Which is bananas.
These are weird dudes.
Just the fact that you could tell that these were like intricate, wanting to sound intricate dudes to say, how about mass narcosis induced by trans-dimensional paranormal sociopathic entities?
That is like, so Star Trek. Like, that's so Star Trek. That is throwing words together to make it sound like futury and like tech. Like that, man, that is Star Trek as fuck.
Oh my God. I didn't know the Star Trek thing, but when I read it, I was going to type it out in my notes. I was like, I'm not even going to type that. Like, I'm just going to fuck trying to type all of that out. So Don't Dream and Drive, hard to follow. It was just like the way the script was written, like there were so many different jump scenes and cuts to this and that. Like I was like, I'm just gonna skim past some of this because I
had to break it up a couple times. Like I think I had to like just read it. Like I did like 3 or 4 different settings where I would just read just sections of it.
Yeah, I had to like, I would skim and catch plot points because there would just be so many scenes where it'd be like cuts to camera and then this and then move and then back to her. It's like, dude, mouth on the nipples. Okay, that's what I wrote. And then very sexual. Yep. So that's all of my notes. I put a line in quotes that I won't say, but if you read the script, people, you'll know which one it is. It's quite straightforward. You're like, okay. All right. No wonder this didn't get past the fucking reading process because someone read that and was like, really, no more tact than that. You just couldn't be a little more subtle than that. Okay.
Oof. Yeah. It's rough.
Yeah. Are you, because you're picking the scripts, are you picking what you think is the worst to the best, or do you just throw one in there? How are you doing?
Okay, so I read a bunch of these years ago, like probably good 10, 15 years ago. The Nightmare 13 one is the one that was the most in my brain. Like that one never left.
How could you
all its
forget
details,
that?
everything about it. Like some of that stuff is just canon in my head. Like the taking the boyfriend's heart and putting it in Jason's heart, so now he loves the girl. Like that is just canon to me because it's never left my brain. It's so crazy. This was the only other script I remembered, but I couldn't remember it in its entirety. I just remembered courtroom drama. Jason's a real person. The movies are movies. And it ends in a mall. And like, that was all I could remember. So I'm going purely based on memory, based on the stuff that just seemed the absolute craziest to me. And just the whole like courtroom like we wrote a Freddy versus Jason script that's 90% a courtroom drama, and then they fight in a mall. I couldn't. I was like, how does that happen? Because I just couldn't remember.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never wrote a script other than like in fucking junior high and high school theater kind of thing, but God in heaven, like I just don't know how you hit certain point. Like he must have been under the influence of something. Like there's no way clear minded. They're like, it'd be fucking badass, right? As if her nipples had mouths on them.
Had nipples on it. Like,
Like,
what are you doing? And it
yeah,
feels like people that have never seen any of these movies
yeah.
writing this. It's like, it's okay if you're not fans, but like, I don't know, do some research. Blockbuster exists.
If I ever fell into large sums of money, just for your sake, I would buy these scripts and I would make them. And I would let
Screw it.
you'd be able to watch Nightmare 13 on the big screen. And I wouldn't give any context to anybody else. It would only be like you and the 12 other people who have read that script. But everyone would be like, a new Freddy versus Jason movie. Hell yeah. And they'd show up and it would be this movie.
They should bring that Nightmare 13 script back, but it should be like the remake. Freddy and Jason. It should be Jackie Earle Haley and Derek Mears.
Best movie of all time.
That'll be the remake, Freddy versus Jason.
Opening night, I'd be there. Dead center. Oh my God. Everyone else would be leaving the theater like, this is awful. Like, this is exactly what I wanted. This is the best movie I've ever seen.
Nightmare 13 would be something, because at least that would be entertainingly bad.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It'd be like the Rocky Horror Picture Show where like you go to it and it's interactive and just make fun of it the whole time. You'd have to do that with this.
It'd be like The Room.
Yeah.
For sure. It'd be the new Room. Like, for sure.
I don't know if you got any more on this fine script. It's just crazy to think. I read that one dude's accolades and the amount of high profile things he's wrote on and produced. And then this is a credit to it. You're like, ugh.
I mean, and we don't know how early of a draft this is.
Yeah.
Like most first drafts of scripts, even for great movies, are often kind of shoddy. Like hardly anybody gets it on the first try. So like this could be just an early draft where they were just throwing shit at the wall and then it just never made it past this. I don't think there's much in the way of salvaging this as a Freddy versus Jason project. Like the courtroom stuff, like maybe something could have been done with that at some point, but none of the Freddy versus Jason stuff was going to go anywhere. And I think New Line was right to just kind of go, pass. No, thank you.
Yeah.
And I will say most of the stuff you read out of their resume, most of that would have been after this, like other than Star Trek.
Yeah.
Like most, like you said, 24 and Battlestar Galactica, that'd have been years after this.
True.
So this may have been early on for them.
That's true. Yeah. It's definitely not as bad as the other, but it's definitely not good. I'm excited to see the other ones in future episodes. I want to see if the quality keeps going up or if it's just a roller coaster.
And see, and I have no memories of the other ones. Like those are complete blanks to me. And I don't know if we do another script one, if we'll do one of those or if we'll maybe switch to a different thing. Because I read like a whole book recently on the unmade Halloween sequels.
Are those terrible?
Some of them sound like, okay, that's interesting. And some of them were like, oh my God, what are you doing?
I mean, they can't be worse than 5 and 6.
It's just synopsis and stuff. I have not sat down and read any of these. I need to like actually try and find them. Because some of them are hard to find. I found like there was one, for example, that was going to be a direct sequel to the Rob Zombie movies, like a Halloween 3. Not by Rob. It would have been the My Bloody Valentine remake team. And they got hired like instantly. And they churned out a script and then the thing just fell apart. Just stuff with the Weinsteins and money. But they wrote a script and it sounded kind of nuts. And it would have been like a big 3D thing, but a continuation of Zombies universe, which is just like weird.
Yeah.
that someone would have like stayed in his world, but it wouldn't have been him. Which seems
Yeah,
kind of crazy.
that is kind of odd.
But I remember them being reported like as the new people back in like 2009, and then it just disappeared. There's one with VR. There's one I'm really curious about that if I can find it will probably be one we do, which is John Carpenter's Halloween 4, because he developed a Halloween 4. He didn't write it, he asked someone to write it. But then Mustafa Akkad didn't like it. And that's when John Carpenter and Deborah Hill threw their hands in the air and said, fuck it, we're out. Just buy us out. We don't care anymore. But some of that sounded interesting, but also kind of weird.
Yeah, I don't know. That's interesting in my head. And like it either could have turned out great or it could have just really, really shit the bed.
And it depends on who they would have gotten to direct it.
Yeah.
But some of it was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. It would have been about Tommy and Lindsay. Laurie and Loomis weren't in it.
That would be.
That's all I really remember. It was a long book. There were so many.
Well, I'm glad it didn't happen because I personally like part 4. So
me too. But it's an interesting, like, what if?
Yeah.
Like in another world kind of thing.
There would have been no Cult of Thorn. Could you have lived with that, Sean?
God. Thank God. Man, reading the books, I also read one that's on the actual series, the movies that got made. And there are like a couple different points where Carpenter almost got like control back of the franchise and then it didn't happen. It's like, oh, fucking damn it. We were so close. Like there was a bidding war for the rights in the early 90s. Carpenter aligned with New Line to bid. Akkad went with the Weinsteins, and the Weinsteins ended up winning, and that's how we got Halloween 6 and everything thereafter. And it's like, man, Michael could have been at New Line. Not that New Line always made great movies. That's still kind of like a fun what if of what would Carpenter and New Line have done with Michael.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting to think about.
That bet. I don't know why the Weinsteins even wanted Halloween. They did nothing but fuck it up for 20 years.
I'm kind of dreading this. Once I get back in Texas and little space set up, I plan on doing a review series of all the Halloween movies because I've never done anything on them. And I'm just dreading after 4 of being like, God damn it, I got a long way to go till I get to anything decent. And to thinking of a world where those didn't exist is just.
And maybe what would have gotten made in their place would have been just as bad, if not worse. But it's still like, I don't know. I'd like to live in the world without Halloween 6.
Yeah, there's so many. Yeah, I could definitely do without having a whole movie following up one of my favorite of the series with a mute, and 2 films with an insane Loomis. Like that's it's bananas. But I'm just gonna get a Cult of Thorn tattoo. That's what I'm gonna do, just to represent. You know. Do you think there's people out there with Cult of Thorn tattoos?
Yes.
You've seen them?
Yeah, that movie has a fan base for sure. Every movie does.
That's got to be a nostalgia thing.
Well, some people do really like that producer's cut, the sort of original version of it, and will sort of swear by it.
Well, I guess teach their own. Do you have any news?
The only thing off the top of my head is that Rob Zombie was talking about his Monsters reboot, and this is something we've talked about before, but he said it's going to be a PG movie, which is really interesting for him, because we had sort of talked about, is this going to be Rob Zombie's The Monsters or something a little more maybe faithful? And according to him, this isn't going to be his normal stuff.
Do you think it's going to be kind of like damn, I just blanked on the movie. Eli Roth, he always made Hostel and all those movies, and then he made The House with the Clock in Its Walls kind of thing, and Death Wish, where it's not his normal style, it's a completely different change. And a lot of some
Or like
people,
Robert Rodriguez with like Spy Kids.
yeah, like some people loved those things,
Mm-hmm.
and some people were like, no. Which to go from making Hostel to making like a fantasy kids movie with all these,
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely gonna like draw a line in the sand with people. And I wonder how it's gonna be with Zombie, if he's gonna be someone who can cross over from that style to a new style, or if it's gonna be like, no, I only want Rob Zombie making Devil's
Yeah.
Rejects.
Um, I mean, this is a bit easier of a transition because even though this might be maybe more geared towards family and kids, it still has horror roots like the monsters have roots in horror. It's not like a complete left turn. Like if it was announced that Rob Zombie's doing a Harry Potter movie, I'd be
Yeah.
like, what? Why? But this feels a little more in his wheelhouse, and I know he's just such a fan of the show. So I mean, it's just curious. Like, it could be really good for him, like a good chance for him to break out and show that he can do different kinds of things, and that he has variety in his style and what he can do. Or it could horrifically backfire. I don't know. I'm definitely curious to see it. Just because one of my issues, I'm sort of in the camp that often finds zombie style a little obnoxious, a little over reliant on the R-rated stuff, and it just becomes a little overbearing and a bit much. So I am curious to see what he can do when that stuff is taken away from him, when he can't just say the F word every other line or just do really gnarly, bloody stuff. So it's curious.
This YouTuber I watch, I like his content a lot, Cody Leach. He has a good theory on Rob Zombie that I personally like Rob Zombie stuff, but he has a theory on him that I think could be true, where he says, I don't like when he writes a movie, but his directing style is insane. So if you could get a good writer and just
Mm-hmm.
have him direct it, it would be phenomenal. I'm like, probably.
I agree with that 100%. Zombie is, particularly at dialogue, not the best writer in the world. And my proof of that is he did a novelization of The Lords of Salem, his movie, and he had a co-writer on the book. And the book's pretty damn good. The movie is less so. And this
Yeah.
other writer wasn't involved in the movie. That was all Rob.
Yeah, I love his directing style. I've never seen some of his other movies, so I don't have too much of an opinion. But for me, I like his writing. But I could definitely see where how that could be divisive, and some people hate it. So I'm curious to see with the monsters how it works. If he's writing the whole thing, if it how it's getting pieced together, how he's going to merge it with a PG thing. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it has the potential to either be like amazing
Mm-hmm.
or not good at all. I don't see like a middle ground for me in my head.
It's just okay.
Yeah, like I either see it
Well, that's not the
working
kind of
well.
director he is. I don't think that's why there's such strong opinions about him.
Yeah. And
Is
that's
that he's never made a movie that people are like, well, that was all right.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think being a zombie thing, it's going to be so divisive. Either there's going to be one side of the group that's like,
Mm-hmm.
fuck yeah. There's going to be one side of the group that goes, this is a horrible Rob Zombie piece of shit. I don't think there's going to be people who just show up and are like, eh,
Yeah.
fine. Um, as far as news, just things I've done a little look up that there's not much going on, but for fans of it, there is a Screambox documentary coming this summer on Pennywise and the story of it, if you like that movie.
Screenbox is making plays.
Yeah, they're moving.
They got Freddy's Nightmares. They're doing documentaries. They're trying to get people.
And then what's the other thing I saw? Speaking of Halloween, at on fun.com, if you guys want to look them up, there's new Michael Myers high top shoes. They look kind of Converse
Ah,
style, but they're Halloween
cool.
themed. And there's also Freddy and Jason themes as well. So
Oh, I think I've maybe seen those.
oh, director Lee Cronin announces a lock on Evil Dead Rise. So it looks like there'll be a new Evil Dead popping off sometime in the future.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that.
So I guess he
So this
said
must be
it's
like they just got a director, I guess.
yeah, he said
Introduced there.
So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I don't know how I feel about Evil Dead. Sometimes I'm like, it's awesome. Sometimes I'm like, overrated. So we'll see. But not much going on in the horror world right now. But yeah, that's all I got.
Yeah, same.
Well, guys, I guess we will see you in 2 weeks. We have some plans to watch the new horror movie coming out, X. As you're listening to this, it should come out this Friday. This Friday. And we'll be taking a look at the Foo Fighters horror movie as well. So that's what you can be looking forward to. Thanks for listening.